San Francisco 49ers making moves for another pass rusher. Does this complete the unit up front for the 2025 team? Very new look unit under Robert Saleh, and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Coach Crocky. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love and appreciate all the everydayers out there. Thanks folks for hanging on with us and getting a little late start here as we go live on this Sunday evening, getting you ready for your Monday morning commutes as well. And even if you're not live with us on YouTube, love that you're hanging out with us as you're on your way to work and listen to us every day as we go through the offseason here and big moves the 49ers are making here over the weekend, getting ready for the 2025 season. And Croc, that means 49ers might have a little bit more sack production this year, depending on which Bryce Huff they get. And according to Adam Schefter, Bryce Huff is on his way to the San Francisco 49ers. And the Philadelphia Eagles, who he spent last season with, even though he was not a big factor for that team, Croc, are paying a lot of his salary, and the 49ers are going to give up a mid-round pick to pay him a little bit less than whatever salary he was going to be making this year. According to ESPN sources, 49ers and Eagles are working to finalize a trade that will send edge rusher Bryce Huff to the San Francisco 49ers for a mid-round pick. The trade cannot and would not be processed until after June 1st. Which is today. And both sides are working to make it happen, and Huff already has reworked his contract to help facilitate the trade. In San Francisco, Huff will be reunited with 49ers defensive coordinator Robert Saleh, his former head coach with the Jets. So many former Jets now being added to the 2025 San Francisco 49ers. Just last week, another defensive player, linebacker Chaz Surratt, was added by the 49ers, and they cut Mitch Wishnowsky, the punter, to bring in 39-year-old former Jets punter Thomas Morstead, too. So there's going to be a lot of familiar faces for Robert Saleh here from both his days with the 49ers and his days with the Jets as they get things going with the 2025 San Francisco 49ers. What are your thoughts here, Croc, initially of the addition of edge rusher Bryce Huff to the San Francisco 49ers?
No, I'll be honest, man. I pride myself on watching a lot of football. Really, whatever game is on TV, I usually have it on, and I have multiple TVs in my office, so I'm watching a lot of different games. Got Red Zone on. I did not know who Bryce Huff was. And I don't know how or why I didn't know, but the 49ers got him, and, I saw 49ers added Bryce Huff. I didn't know how they added him. I thought, okay, here's a free agent edge rusher that was just available at the moment. Then you start kind of looking a little deeper. You're like, 49ers traded for him. 49ers potentially traded a mid-round pick for him. A year ago, he had 10 sacks in the season. That number went down with Philadelphia to 2. Then you start to dive into, how could that happen? And start looking at, under Robert Saleh and whatever defense Robert Saleh had him playing in, he excelled, played well, and had a 10-sack production. Right now, people get 10 sacks different. Leonard Floyd, what did he have? 10 sacks last year, and nobody really said anything about it. However many sacks he had, close to 10, whatever it was. So there could be kind of a quiet double-digit sack, or it could be loud. And I'm not sure which one his was, but I do know this: you could have 10 sacks with the New York Jets under Robert Saleh, and you fit that defensive scheme. If you can go somewhere else and they want to pay you a bunch of money, but you don't quite fit what this defensive coordinator would happen to be, Vic Fangio, maybe it wasn't a great marriage between those two. So there's a lot of people putting in stock, especially Philadelphia Eagle fans. 49ers got fleeced. All right, we'll see. But I'll take my chances on the guy who played under Robert Saleh and now is reunited with him. And I think it just helps the 49ers defensively because you had a lot of youth. You added a lot of youth that was really right now ready to stop the run. And we talked about developing as a pass rusher. Well, now you went and got a guy that has proven with productivity that, I can get to the quarterback. So this is something, the more I looked into it, the more I really liked.
Bryce Huff draft pick out of Memphis, 6'3", 255 pounds. And he's bounced around a little bit already in his career and has been sort of a, athletic outside, speed type of a rusher. And his career with the New York Jets, 4 years, he had a nice 10 sack season in 2023. And that's the thing that got him paid by the Philadelphia Eagles. So 10 sacks was his, by far, I mean, it more than doubled his sack production from any other year in his career. In fact, he had exactly 10 sacks combined his first 3 years in the league, 2020, 2021, and 2022 with the New York Jets. 2023, his final year with the Jets under Robert Saleh. He had a 10 sack season that year, and then just was not the same guy. That just did not have the same production. Blame it on whatever. And there's some very low light, I don't know what you call it, low light packages out there with him not looking great with the Philadelphia Eagles last year. And Philadelphia Eagles fans, Crocker, are excited, and they're dancing in the streets thinking that the 49ers overpaid by giving up anything for a guy that they just wanted gone and thought he might just get completely cut because he was such a non-factor for the Philadelphia Eagles last year. He had 2 sacks, was not even active for the Super Bowl, just a player that they brought in to provide something, and it ended up being some, other draft picks and other internal players that ended up being the guys that the Philadelphia Eagles leaned on for that extra pass rush. Guys like Jalix Hunt, who was a former safety, small school college guy, super athletic, ended up kind of playing some of the role of Bryce Huff, and Nolan Smith out of Georgia as well. And so they got the production they needed without Bryce Huff. So he was clearly expendable by the Philadelphia Eagles, and for whatever reason was just not a factor at all last year. And so the question becomes, are you getting the 2 sack guy? Are you getting the 4 sack guy? Or are you getting his most recent season with Robert Saleh from 2023 with the New York Jets? Are you going to get that 10 sack guy that can be a rotational nightmare? Because, Croc, we talked about it. I was on the air on Thursday with Jason Aponte on the OT with BP channel, and we were talking about this very subject. The 49ers had to add another pass rush piece to the plan. It was clearly not a unit that was finished yet, and this looks like that piece. Bryce Huff now joining the San Francisco 49ers. I'm kind of in the middle on this one, Croc, because I think there's some 49ers fans that are really excited about it because, okay, good, got the pass rusher because the Niners draft picks were more run defenders than pass rushers, and the 49ers need somebody who can provide some rush, on those 3rd and long situations, and I totally agree with that. I don't think Bryce Huff has a track record in the NFL of being such a slant. Like, you're not getting, it's not like the Rams getting Von Miller, right? Like, you hope you get the 10 sack guy, but it's possible that maybe he's more like what we saw with the Eagles or more like what we saw earlier in his career with the Jets than getting, double digit sacks for the 49ers. And then on the other side of that, there's Philadelphia Eagles saying that they fleeced fans and some media saying that the Eagles fleeced the 49ers because they gave up anything at all of value for a completely sunk cost, completely worthless player that the Eagles did not want. And we'll see what exactly the restructured contract looks like and exactly what pick that ends up being for the 49ers going to the Philadelphia Eagles. But if it's a later round pick, I think mid-round is the way it was phrased. If it's a later mid-round pick, if we're talking more 5-6, something like that, and the 49ers don't have to pick up a lot of salary, then yeah. But if the 49ers gave up a lot, then you might still have given up something of value for a guy who ends up being that 2 to 4 sack guy who he's been for most of his career.
Yeah, you look at the numbers, and that definitely paints a different picture than the double-digit sack season, the one double-digit sack season that he had. Not having over 4 sacks, or excuse me, over 3.5 sacks in any other season, I think is a little questionable. Being a guy, especially if he was healthy for the Philadelphia Eagles, who really pride themselves on winning up front, getting after the quarterback. 2.5 sacks, only played in 12 games. I like the potential of the move in that he has shown that he can be productive, but which version of him are you getting? And right now, if I had to just, if I'm a gambling man, which I can be, All right, if I'm gambling the man, if they set the over under on the sacks at 3.5, it would be hard not to take the under.
I'd take the over on 3.5, but if you're expecting 10, I would take the under just because we don't know exactly what he's going to be. We don't know how much he's going to see the field, but it was clearly a need for the 49ers, and they have addressed that need. So let's talk about this defensive line. Are they indeed done, Croc? Is this build of the D-line now finished, ready to go, ready to execute here in 2025? And I do want to address a little bit more deeply something that you brought up a little bit, and I'm seeing in the chat here about exactly how much scheme matters on the defensive side of the ball. We talk about it a lot on the offensive side of the ball. How could someone like Bryce Huff be a lot better in, say, Robert Saleh's scheme than, say, Vic Fangio's scheme? And I want to talk a little bit about Jawan Jennings as well, and what kind of season he's in for, what kind of role he could play, and what that might mean for him next offseason. Coming up next. This episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder where did all that money go between dining out, online shopping, entertainment? It's easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Tons of insights. You realize how much you're spending on food delivery, coffee every day. Now you can budget smarter after you get the app, save more, and managing money with your partner. That easy collaboration, man. Love it. It's smoother than ever with Monarch Money because you can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Croc, so whether it's Bryce Huff specifically or not, take us through. You've played defense at a high level. You've been a professional football player on the defensive side of the ball. And maybe they like to keep things a little bit simpler scheme-wise for defenses, but man, with the way coverages are now and the way that you have to work games and the way you have to come up with ways to win on the defensive side of the ball and be smart enough to combat all the stuff and motion that they're doing on the offensive side of the ball, how could a guy who's, say, a good pass rusher with one team be a bad pass rusher with the other team, even though he's the same guy year to year?
Well, because it looks like he was kind of the same pass rusher with one team as he was with the other outside of one season. So that comes back to just which version of him are you getting, or why did he get so many sacks? And again, like you can look at just sack numbers, but that doesn't really tell the full story. I would like to, pressure rate, win rate percentage. Like, a lot of those things I think could tell us a little bit more about Huff and what type of defensive end he is, as opposed to just looking at the number of the amount of sacks that he had for a season.
Jones in the chat says, all these NFL players are good. It's the scheme that makes them great. He brings up Christian McCaffrey. I think Christian McCaffrey was already pretty great with the Panthers and was just still great with the 49ers.
Yeah, 1,000 rushing yards and 1,000 receiving yards in the season.
He's just a different dude altogether. Quick note on
which not much. He didn't have the same kind of supporting cast, like to take the pressure off of him. It wasn't like, the CMC and George Kittle and Debo and Ayuk and, it wasn't all that. It was just kind of like, CMC, DJ Moore. That was about it.
Marquez says, Huff plays better in a wide 9 scheme than what the Eagles run, which is a 3-4 scheme. I don't know. It's hard. I mean, obviously you're asked to do specific things, but I think being out wide is not all that dissimilar from being, that outside backer, quote unquote, outside pass rusher in a 3-4 defense, because you're going to be outside. You're working on the tackle. You have space to do what you want. Now, is Huff? Are you saying Huff's better because of Saleh, the way he uses him in an attacking role? Did Robert Saleh use the same wide 9 front exactly and coach it exactly the same as Kuzeric does with the 49ers too? And that's another question. And will there be a melding of the two? Did he start to differ from it when he went away from the 49ers with the way they teach it there, with the way they teach it here? And so, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I would need more specifics on why it did work, why it didn't work. Really quick, I just got sidetracked because of the Christian McCaffrey comment. Did you see the quote from, I believe it was a Sam Darnold talking about Christian McCaffrey? And essentially what he said was, I want to see if I can get the right quote. Quote, he is the most internally motivated person I've ever met, talking about Christian McCaffrey. And it just kind of struck me because we're talking about, did he lose a step and, trying to scout the cell phone footage from 49ers OTAs and if he's going to be the same guy or not, which is, kind of overblown, what you can actually learn from that. But that's not even the thing with Christian McCaffrey, right? Like how fast he is not the thing. And it's really never been the thing for Christian McCaffrey. And I think Sam Darnold kind of nailed it with his analysis, right? It's how internally motivated he is, how important every yard is. And those are the things that I really appreciated after the 49ers brought in Christian McCaffrey, whether I thought that, it was not smart to spend that much for a running back in trade and salary or not. It's really fun to watch Christian McCaffrey because it matters, because he plays so hard and because he's so smart and he's so prepared to play any role and he's so good at doing multiple things. It's what makes Christian McCaffrey special isn't because he's got like some crazy burst and he's running away from guys. In fact, he'll get caught sometimes, even at his prime. He's not just like, he runs 4.3 and runs by guys. That's never been what Christian McCaffrey's been about. It's something else altogether. It's all of the parts put together is what makes Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, not definitely, man. And I mean, just the mental aspect of things, right? I talked to a lot of kids and athletes a lot about finding that edge. And clearly he has found his edge. You watch the way he prepares, you watch the way he lifts weights, you watch the way he does speed training in the offseason. I think internally, I'm pretty sure he hears a lot of what people are saying about him with potentially losing a step or what people were saying leading up to this, me included, right? Like what version of Christian McCaffrey are we going to get for this next season? Running backs, they fall off a cliff at a certain age. They start to, these injuries start to mount up, the wear and tear on their tires, all these different things. He's probably using a lot of that as motivation as he heads into this. I mean, there are a lot of people, Brian Peacock included, that drafted him number 1 overall in their fantasy league, and he didn't end up playing most of the season. Maybe he's hearing some of that. He doesn't care. I remember I don't know if it was a Saturday Night Live skit or it was one of those skits where he was like, F your fantasy team. That was like from like a year or so ago, like prior to last season. But so he doesn't care as much, but I'm pretty sure he hears a lot of these things and he probably uses a lot of it as motivation. So whatever somebody has to tell themselves. I heard a story about Michael Jordan where he was going into a game and he was like, I heard about what you said about me. And the guy like didn't say anything about him. And he's like, nah, like don't try to back down now. And he like took it to him and scored like 45.
Yeah.
And it's like the guy never said anything, but he was just finding something that would give him that mental edge throughout the game. I think Christian McCaffrey does a lot of that as well.
I want to move on to another topic, but this fascinates me so much about Christian McCaffrey, and I just think back to the Super Bowl. Do you remember Super Bowl when? And I know everybody does, even though you maybe compartmentalized it and put it somewhere in the back of your mind. When Brock Purdy gets hurt, and you think, "Wow, man, this is early, and this Super Bowl is almost over." And you remember the how hard Christian McCaffrey was playing in the run,
the conference championship game.
Or conference championship game, excuse me. Yeah, against the Philadelphia Eagles. My bad. Yeah, conference. Yeah, see, I put it in a weird place. I even forgot what game it was. Conference championship game against the Philadelphia Eagles, and he scores that touchdown. It's like, are the Niners going to stick around in this game? Like, is it a game? Even though Brock Purdy's not playing, and then the Josh Johnson thing, it just completely fell apart after that. But like at halftime, it was like, Christian McCaffrey kind of single-handedly tried to keep them in that game, and that's what I really appreciate. Now, look, I'm still the West Coast chairman of Running Backs Don't Matter. And I think the 49ers were fine running for 5 yards a carry last year. It's everything else that Christian McCaffrey brings. That's the greatness of Christian McCaffrey. That's why I keep talking about, like, dude, elongate the guy's career. Let him play the wide back role. Utilize his ability as a receiver, but the threat of run, so he can still run, but utilize his ability as a receiver and give the I don't want to call them cheap touches, but give the touches that wear you down the fastest that other people can be replacement level very high at, and keep Christian McCaffrey healthier and playing for longer and more valuable to your team and healthy when you do get to the playoffs, and utilize all the other talent he has and all of that other ability. And that's the way I think you would maximize Christian McCaffrey's talent on this current San Francisco 49ers team, rather than just like, here's a million touches and let's hope he stays healthy. I just don't think that's the right way to play it.
Well, one thing that's definitely missing is Deebo Samuel. And, although Deebo was a very unique receiver, the way they utilize him and the touches and ways they were able to get him the ball kind of substituted some touches that maybe Christian McCaffrey also could have gotten. So not having him, I'm curious to see how Kyle Shanahan kind of adjust his play calling, not having that dynamic weapon like Deebo, because I don't care who you try to put back, there is no other Deebo Samuel. Now, whether Deebo was doing things at as high of a level as we once saw him do, that's a whole nother conversation. But just the way you were able to utilize him, he was very, very, very unique. And also I think within that, it took away some touches from Christian McCaffrey, which you would like to try to keep him a little bit healthier. So you can't replace Deebo Samuel, but I'm curious to see how, like, those touches that Deebo typically would get in place of CMC, how do you do that with someone else?
Because I don't think Jawan Jennings is that guy. I don't know that either of the young day 3 draft picks, Watkins, Cowing, they're not that type of player. Ricky Pearsall's definitely not that type of player. Ayuk, when he's healthy, is not that type of player. Christian McCaffrey's the closest, man. Wide back 2.0, I swear. Christian McCaffrey, it would be fun. And I don't know if the 49ers would do it like that, or Kyle Shanahan and maybe Christian McCaffrey doesn't see that. But Christian McCaffrey, you might be able to talk him into it and be like, look, dude, it's more valuable being a wide receiver in this world than it's being a running back. You can play longer. You can make more money too. So maybe lean into the wide back thing a little bit if you're Christian McCaffrey, and maybe even ask for it if you're Christian McCaffrey. And the Niners could still have that wrinkle on offense. Let's talk Jawan Jennings' role, though, next, Croc, what that might look like. And a really interesting report from Matt Mayoko about what kind of contract Jawan Jennings might be looking for after this season next. So I heard a clip of Matt Mayoko talking about Jawan Jennings, and it was really interesting. And I want to get your thoughts, Croc, about both the contract comp, the player comp, which is really interesting for that contract of what Jawan Jennings might be looking for after this season. And a bigger deal right now for the 49ers is what his role will be currently on the 2025 team, knowing that there's injuries. And now Ricky Pearsall, got the tweaked hamstring, and they're going to play it cautious with him and bring him back, hopefully 100% at training camp. And obviously Brandon Ayuk, very unlikely to be ready to go early on in the NFL season. So Jawan Jennings is going to get starters touches, clearly. But how do you view this role for Jawan Jennings? And is he just a big slot number 3? Or can this guy just say, actually, you know what? I'm going to be number 1 for a while. And maybe I'll be number 1 all season if that's what you need.
A lot of times we pigeonhole guys into what we think they're supposed to be, right? I think that's one of the uphill battles that Brock Purdy continues to fight right now, a guy who has excelled. And if he was the number 1 overall pick, maybe he'd be viewed different by a lot of people. But 7th overall pick, there's got to be something to it, and they view him a certain way. Is that Jawan Jennings, a guy who was a 7th round pick, once cut, brought back, practice squad, finally got his time to get on the field, and he made a role for himself. All right, I'll be this big slot. I'll be the nasty guy. I'll be the Draymond Green of the 49ers, right? Do all the dirty work, get under guys' skin, get some flags. They might throw a flag on me here and there, but I'm going to do all the extra stuff. And then guys went down. Guys were hurt. Young receiver, guys shot. All kind of wild things going on. They said, okay, well, you need me to be more? You need me to be almost 8,000-yard receiver? Well, you know what? I can do that too. Croc, you were wrong. You compared me to Kendrick Bourne. You know what? I'm better than Kendrick Bourne, right? I could do more than Kendrick Bourne. And I don't know if he did more than Kendrick Bourne. Yeah, technically did over 900 yards in the season. But also, I got to wondering, should we continue to pigeonhole him into being this big just slot? I mean, it was just a couple of days ago, I was saying, oh man, you know, you need Brandon Ayuk back there, and you need Pearsall back out there. Like, those are your guys. Those are your guys. Well, Jawan Jennings, you know, shows first day of OTAs, you know, they did the slow motion throw. See the tight spiral from Brock Purdy, and you look on the other end of it, and it's Jawan Jennings. I think he was beating Renardo Green. So right now, it seems like it doesn't matter who's guarding him, but he's a guy that has been productive in every role that they've put him in, whether they need him to catch 2 passes in the game or whether, like last season, I think we saw him catch 10 plus passes in the game. He's a guy that steps up to the plate no matter what they're asking of him. And again, the question, I guess, is he more than what we pegged him to be? And if he is, what is that going to make him on the market financially? Because now that's another guy that you're probably going to have to look to pay.
Yeah, it's really interesting comp in Jacoby Myers as that player. And he was a guy that played that role with the New England Patriots. And let's see, his last, so here are the yearly stats for Jacoby Myers as a potential comp for Jawan Jennings and what he might be looking to get paid in the offseason. Jacoby Myers in 2019 as a rookie came in and played 15 games, started 1 game for the New England Patriots and had 359 receiving yards on 26 catches. And then it jumped up. And the next 3 years are very Jawan Jennings-like. And it actually kind of continued into Las Vegas until he had his best year last year in 2024 for the Raiders and actually eclipsing 1,000 yards for the first time, even though he's already gotten paid by the Raiders coming over from the New England Patriots. So in his second, third, fourth years, he had 59, 83, and 67 catches. And the yardage was 729, 866, and 804. Then he went to the Raiders on a free agent contract and caught 71 balls for 807 yards, which is kind of like exactly right in line with the 3 seasons prior, almost exactly the averages of those 3 seasons prior in New England in his first year in Las Vegas. And then last year he had his career year in Las Vegas, age 28 in 2024, his 6th year in the NFL. 15 games, he had 87 catches for 1,027 yards and 4 touchdowns. So Jacoby Myers, and he's a guy who played a lot in the slot for the New England Patriots, who, you know, consistently roll 3 wide receivers out there in the late Tom Brady era. So interesting comp there for Jacoby Myers, Croc. And I actually, whoever the scout was that Matt Maiocco talked to, or was it an agent or a scout? I think it was an agent actually that Matt Maiocco talked to. I think he kind of nailed it. I think that's perfect. And then the question becomes, shoot, can the 49ers afford to pay Jawan Jennings a Jacoby Myers like free agent contract? And so that becomes the next question. And I don't know that the 49ers can. They got a first-round wide receiver and a really expensive Brandon Ayuk. And so you almost might have like, and the better Jawan Jennings plays, the less likely he is to come back almost, right? Unless you're still planning on trying to jettison Brandon Ayuk at some point, and then you would have to bring Jawan Jennings back.
It's funny looking at Jacoby Myers' stats, right? As you talk about Jawan Jennings, and you look at targets, and I see here 129 targets, 126 targets, right? You're seeing all that. A couple, one right above 100 yards, one right below 100 yards. And then you think of like 49ers wide receiver 1, Brandon Ayuk, and he's like, I've never seen 120 targets in a season.
When's the last time a 49ers player targeted 129 times?
Okay, so I just looked it up. I said, okay, I know George Kittle had to have a season where he had something like that as far as targets go. And 1 year has George Kittle had so he had 107 targets in 2019. The year before that, George Kittle had 136 targets. That was the record-breaking season with 1,377 yards. So aside from that, Kittle has been under 100 targets aside from those 2 years. Kittle has been under 100 targets every year. Even last year, all pro. He only had 94 targets. Year before that, 90. Year before that, 86. Year before that, 94. All right. Now, part of it too could be Kittle played 15 games last season, 16 the season before that, 15 the year before that, 14 the year before that. So obviously he's kind of missing a little bit of time there, but the targets, the 49ers guys, they're just, and maybe it's the team as well. Like, hey man, we got all these guys we're throwing the ball to, but they're just not getting the same amount of targets as other people are getting.
Really quick note here to finish this up. But yeah, by the way, Jawan Jennings, kind of a sneaky pick in your fantasy football leagues. He might stay in the starting lineup potentially all year. There's a lot that could happen with how this team is put together at wide receiver. And he is the veteran in the room, and he is the incumbent in the room. And I think that bodes well for his role with the 49ers this year and potentially getting that Jacoby Myers type contract potentially in the offseason. A real quick note here relayed from Anthony and Sam Modson, formerly of Pro Football Focus, said that Bryce Huff's pass rush win rate in 2022 was 25.6. In 2023, his 10-sack season was 22.9. So big time pass rush win rates. And then in 2024, last year with the Eagles, dropped all the way down to 6.9 from 20. And some of the low lights I saw, it's like you can't blame scheme. There was a pass rush where he just like fell on his face for no reason. There was another play where he was just like, "Where are you going, Magellan?" Like he's just like trying to explore new territory.
Who posted those clips though? Well, are those Eagle fans?
There were some things that like. Even just for it to happen, even that few times, it's like, that looks like a dude who might have just completely checked out. And if you ask me, I bet that's a bigger issue for what happened with Bryce Huff last year. Not that he forgot how to play football or that he was such a bad scheme fit that he couldn't play. I think it was something else. And I bet there was like some mental checkout going on because it was the low lights are pretty bad. I will admit. And I can see why some Philadelphia Eagles fans would be, a little frustrated that they gave some big free agent contract to a guy who was like basically did nothing for them.
Now, I'm not comparing him to Nick Bosa.
Yeah.
But I bet I can find a couple clips to make Nick Bosa look really bad. And now I'm not saying I am not saying Bryce Huff is this great football player or anything, but I despise the people that cherry pick plays because you can do that with literally everybody in the league. I can make Jamar Chase look like he takes plays off. Oh, look how he ran this route here. And you can put together 5 to 10 clips and just totally disregard the other 1,000 plays that he played at full speed. So I'm not saying that Huff did not check out, but I have a hard time taking that from Eagles.
Right. Yeah. So it's some creative editing from Eagles fans that are a little salty about the Bryce Huff era. But now the Bryce Huff era begins in San Francisco, back with Robert Saleh. Can he get the most out of him? The 49ers are going to need it. So they're going to need that pass rush. And I love how it just kind of brings the room together. It's like in The Big Lebowski, the dude's rug brings the room together. Having another pass rusher, the 49ers had to add one. Now you have a third, fourth rusher, Sam Okuwanu. You have Bryce Huff. You have the ability to move Michael Williams inside. You've got a rotation of 4 or 5 defensive tackles as well to keep those guys fresh and move them around. And that's I never thought I'd be comparing the San Francisco 49ers defense to the Big Lebowski, but here we are. In June 1st, that's where our minds are at with the San Francisco 49ers. Let us know what you think. What do you think of Bryce Huff, the San Francisco 49er, and what the 49ers paid to get him? Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Appreciate all the everydayers out there. Thanks for tuning in. Tell a friend. And if you're new to the program, make sure you are subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. And Croc and I back tomorrow right here. Locked On 49ers.